Welcome to Joyful Journeys, stories to encourage and inspire, the postpartum edition. I am Zindzi Aya, and this webinar is being presented to you by FullWell. I don't know about you, but I listen so much better when I'm comfortable. So take this moment if you just popped into this webinar and get cozy. Get your favorite blanket, your favorite socks. If it's warm where you are, get a cup of tea, a few snacks, refreshing snacks, whatever you need to be comfortable and cozy and to ride with us for the next 30 to 45 minutes or so. Get that and then meet me back here. For those of you who may not know me, my name is Zindzi Aya. I am a writer, a storyteller. I am also a student of traditional midwifery. For the past 20 years or so, I have worked as a professional writer, and the past 10 years, I've been able to add in there being a certified doula, being a birth keeper, and being able to walk with families during one of the most transformational times in their lives, from preconception through postpartum. And I mean, long out in postpartum, years after children are had and families are created. So, my credentials: I'm a certified doula, I'm a professional childbirth consultant and family advocate. And the reason I found it so important to offer this specific offering of stories as a gift, as a webinar, is because people who are building family, mamas and birthers, do not have enough stories to encourage, to inspire, to spark a bit of faith in what's possible outside of the rhetoric, outside of the narrative that's given. You know, we are in a society that usually we capitalize off of trauma right about now. And there's a big industry to be had in helping us fix things before we even face them. And so, what I have experienced is that stories have the power to heal our souls and ourselves. A lot of times, what's showing up in our bodies started somewhere way before. And so, if we could have access to more stories that depict these experiences in a different light, what could be possible? We don't know. And so, I am spearheading this movement of offering beautiful stories as a beacon of light in a sea of darkness where people are having very real issues, very real struggles, but they don't just need remedies in the form of how to fix or avoid those struggles. They also need to see, or may want to see, some stories of other possibilities, knowing that those possibilities are accessible to them. If they can happen to other people, they can surely happen for you as well. And so that is why this is, for me, the most powerful and potent gift that I could possibly be giving. When I was a baby doula, and I'm still very much a baby in the world of birth work, compared to the wise women who precede me and the decades of experience they have being at the feet of the women, of the birthers, of the mothers. I am still a baby in this world. But when I was even more of a baby, I thought that statistics were the answer. I thought if I could remember all the latest and greatest evidence based information, that would make me the best person for mamas and families to choose as their support person, as their birth witness, the person to walk with them. And they taught me something else. They taught me we are more than capable of digging up our own statistics. We have clinicians left and right throwing numbers our way and telling us what our chances of gestational diabetes and all these things are. We don't need that from you, too. What we would like to hear are stories of what you've seen, because you are in these sacred spaces more than most. And outside of your own personal experiences, we want to know, like, my own personal experiences as a woman and as a womb bearer. They wanted to know what I had seen. What did I know because I had witnessed it, not because someone else had conducted some experiment or watched or observed a select few people and then wrote a report about it. You know, I was giving statistics and they were asking for stories. I was taught and trained to give prescriptions. If you're in pain, if you're uncomfortable, here's what we could do. I was taught to give prescriptions. They were saying, back up. We just want your presence. Let me move through this moment. I was trying to offer my wisdom, which we can never really do, right? We can only ever point someone in the direction of the knowing that lives within them. My wisdom may not fit your way. And they were telling me, you're good. I have my own wisdom that's gotten me through life up to this point. I just need you to witness me. Just be with me through this. And so over the years, I'm so grateful that they taught me to sit back, to learn to sit on my hands and to watch and to trust birth and our bodies and the wisdom of the babies and the body's brilliance, the body's way of, even when it appears as an issue, the body's way of finding its way around the hurdles. And they taught me something, that stories of the mother medicine, stories are almost always welcome. They're not looking for me to fix everything. They just want to know that we can snuggle up and I can listen deeply, or I can share something that may be relevant to a sticking point in their lives. And it is from these experiences over the past decade that I came to realize that stories have a way of midwifing us through the thick of life. They become and they form portals of possibility in seemingly fixed realities. A story can change what we're observing just by offering the possibility that it could be, that it might not be, that maybe there's an alternative that we have not yet observed on a mass level that could be experienced here in this moment. And so, before we get into the juiciness of these postpartum stories, I would like to invite you to an opening meditation, a landing point, if you will, an energetic line of demarcation between the worlds we just exited out of, the moments we just are coming out of for a moment, and the moment we're about to go into. We're going to land before we leap, give a kind of attention version of libations to this moment, this collective moment together. So, if you will, go ahead and get comfortable, orient your body in a way that complements silence for you. You can close your eyes or otherwise fix your eyes on something that is friendly to the gaze. That can be your feet, that can be the window. Usually it's not a screen. So go ahead and fix your eyes somewhere eye friendly, somewhere relaxing, calming, and bring your attention to your breath. For many of us, this will be the first time we've heard silence in 24 hours. Not soundlessness, but just the absence of noise. Notice where your breath moves your body. See what's coming up for you. What is the silence saying? How are you feeling? What are you feeling? What, if anything, does your body need before presencing itself to this moment? And on your next exhale, go ahead. If your body can do this and if it's comfortable, drop your chin to your chest and take some nice and easy breath rolls, breath rolls, neck rolls with a breath. Inhale as your head goes back and exhale as your head comes forward. And welcome to this moment. And so now we get into the opening questions. What images, feelings, and words come to mind when you hear postpartum? Namely, what's the first one or two words that come to mind? What are you looking forward to the most in postpartum, in your postpartum period, or the least? Or when you were entering your postpartum, what were you most looking forward to? And what were you least looking forward to? Complete this sentence. Life after birth is, and then I invite you to reflect on what are the stories that you have associated with postpartum, that you've told yourself about postpartum, that have led to you completing the sentence in that way. I always love to share my reflections so that you understand my reflections on the questions that I ask, so that you understand the perspective or the lens through which you will be hearing these stories. For me, postpartum doesn't just mean after birth, right? It means, and I mean, literally, that's the meaning. It's technically usually thought to be 6 weeks after birthing. I say postpartum is forever. It is literally the period after birth. Now, it may overlap with other moments. You can be in postpartum and in preconception. You can be in postpartum and also pregnant again and preparing to birth, and so other moments and other periods overlap it. But after birth, postpartum is forever. And so I like to think of it almost very what do you call it? Very literally, um, post after the parting. After you part ways with your seed, this now you have entered postpartum. And however that parting has happened, early term birth, like a voluntary release, a full term live birth, a full term non live birth, whatever that is, giving a child up for adoption, whatever your journey is, after you have held life and then you part from that life, you have now crossed the threshold into postpartum. And this becomes a season, ideally, I believe nature intended for it to be a season of rest, recovery, not just of your physical body, but of your spirit, of your emotions, of your mind, of your new normal, depending on what your experience was. A time of reimagination of what life is, what your expectations are from yourself, what you expected the mothering and parenting journey to be like, and what it is, and the balancing of the scales, and a moment of reintegration. You have to find a way to move back into this capitalist life, this life where everything's about production and keep going and what are you doing in a time when you're really meant to be doing a lot less than we often find ourselves in. And so it is through this lens, this imagining of postpartum as being a time after the parting where we're resting, recovering, reimagining, reintegrating, recalibrating. Um, it's through this lens that these stories are told. When I am asked what I think, what I feel postpartum is, I usually say the first thing I say what it's not. Postpartum is not synonymous with depression and hardship. It is simply life after birth. And like life, you can't predict exactly how yours will go. You might be able to give a sketch, but no one can know because, like life, we don't control everything. We do our best to prepare. As I like to say, we make a plan and then we wing it, right? Because here comes life, offering us what we most need in order to grow, evolve, do what we have to do, and become who we were meant to become in this life. And none of us fully know the full ins and outs of what that is for ourselves, and especially not what that is meant to be for someone else. And so, the one thing I would like to offer is that I hear very often people use postpartum almost as synonymous with depression or synonymous with a tough time or synonymous with exhaustion. And while that can be a part and that may sprinkle or litter or color a lot of our experiences, it is not true for everyone. I have witnessed it. It is not true for every person. And it is not true for every culture. And it is just simply not true. And so we get to fill the space with our stories of our experiences um, that color and show an array of postpartum journeys, especially for those of us who it may have meant hardship or depression or loneliness or struggle. It's nice to imagine another possibility. And so I have four stories that I would love to share with you in this time that we're together. The first one I call Until You Close the Door. It is my own personal story and experience with postpartum in a way that most of us do not think of or consider postpartum. I have another that is near and dear to me, the story of my courageous sister and the mother of my goddaughter, and the way she went through her postpartum period. And it's entitled Don't Call Me. Another personal experience and supporting a sister friend through birth as a postpartum doula. And this one is just called Please Just Hold Them. And finally, this is more so an extraction of a conversation that I was gifted to have with a mama alongside whom I walked through birth. And it's something that I remember saying to her, and it was another moment will come. And so, yeah, let's just get into it. This story is very, very intimate, very personal. It is called Until You Close the Door. Um, when I was in my early 20s, I was in a very intense relationship where I became pregnant and I was not expecting to. Now, I wasn't prepared for it, let me say that, but I knew the moment it happened that it had happened. And my partner at that time was laughing and joking and calling me paranoid. But when you know, you know. And if you've ever been there, then you know. Something was different. I could feel something was going to be different. That's all I could feel. Now, this is before I entered the birth world. I only had like one or two friends who had had children. And I just, I was just living. I was just living and life happened. So a month or so later, I was proven right. I let my partner know. And, we're scurrying in a frantic and a panic, like, oh, what do we do? What is going to happen? When you think everything's going to fall apart, I scheduled a doctor's appointment. And while I was in an interview, I felt this piercing pain. And I excused myself. I was looking for a different job, a better job, because now I'm a mother and I have to get ready, and I need to prepare better. But then this pain kind of halted everything. And before I had that pain, one night I was with my partner and he said, "Oh, I had the best dream." I dreamt that your grandmother was holding the baby. And I immediately burst into tears because even with all I didn't know, I was very close to my grandmother, my maternal grandmother. And I told him, I said, if that's what you dreamt, the baby's not coming earthside. And so I began mourning. And, of course, he's looking like everything's fine. Like in the real world, nothing is wrong. So just calm down. I only told you because I thought it would make you happy. I mean, he was telling the truth, but he's like, I only shared it with you because I thought you'd be excited to hear it. So fast forward, I'm in this interview, this sharp pain comes, I go to the restroom, and, you know, it's the beginning of the birth. And so, and usually we don't call it that early, especially that early on. There are all kinds of, technical and scientific names for it, but I call it birth. Child comes in is conception, the time you incubate is your pregnancy, and the time you release is your birth. Literally, in the medical world, the way that birth is defined is the expelling of the contents of the uterus. So, with that unromantic and very harsh description, that it's a birth. So I am birthing this seed very, very, very early. Had I not been in tuned or kind of felt the way I felt, I probably wouldn't even have taken a pregnancy test and would have just thought, oh, my flow is a little bit late. But I still kept the doctor's appointment. And, I was checked out and he said, everything, you probably wouldn't have known otherwise. This is very common. It happens 25% of all first time pregnancies, end in miscarriage. And, he was trying to be as, objective and clear and informative as possible. But something in me felt unraveled. Um, and I didn't know what to do about it because in this world, right, there are only certain mothers that are really celebrated, and those are mothers with live children. And so we have a tendency to make comments and to make assumptions um, when we don't know a womb's story and we don't know how people define motherhood and how they feel connected to their experiences. And so something felt unraveled and I didn't know how to ravel it. But in the world in which I was living and my understanding at that time, it was just, you got to move on. You have to go ahead and, finish the interviews and move forward and prepare yourself so that if this happens again in the future, you'll be better prepared. Fast forward 4 years. 4 years later, I'd had another experience that had really kind of gutted me, another fertility journey experience that went further. And I was in this program, like a self development program for women. And this woman looks at me, one of the presenters. She looks at me and she says, um, tell me about your experience. And so I share my most recent experience. And she said, something before that. She said, you had what we call a spiritual pregnancy before this most recent experience. And I had almost forgotten because that's, if I was hurt and I didn't know what to do with the hurt. And the best thing I knew how to do was to keep on moving forward. So I just kept on moving forward. And then I remembered, oh, yes, I did have another experience. And I told her, and she said to me, we call that, in my tradition, we call that a spiritual pregnancy. It is the purpose of that soul is to wake you up to some aspect of yourself so that you can be ready the next time. And I marveled at the fact that I felt throughout that journey something was awakened in me. It was specifically my intuition, my ability to hear and sense that which I could not prove. I began to understand that there was this extra array of senses, not just a sixth, like a sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 50th sense that was awakened. My dreams were so vivid. I could hear everything, smell everything. Things that usually come much later in certain people's pregnancies were just there immediately. And she said to me, until you close that door, you can't hold new life because there's like a back door that's still open. You have to let go and close up the space through which the child came. And we so often don't hear stories about celebrating the postpartum when a pregnancy doesn't go to full term, when it's not a live birth. Like, there is a period after birth which we have to close up the womb energetically, where we have to seal up the experience, where we should take at least 6 weeks to process, to be softer, to be still, to rest, to recover, to reimagine, and to reintegrate into the world, because you will never not be a mother. You will never be the person who hasn't held life. And that means something. And similar to my grandmother, when I was younger, she would say, don't hold my door open and let in all those flies. What this teacher was telling me is that if you do not honor the postpartum period, you leave the door open and you let in flies. You don't wait for the external world to validate your experience. You, as a womb bearer, are responsible for knowing that every open door, every time you conceive, you've opened a door. And every time you birth, there's a door that's been opened again. The door that's been closed in order to seal in that experience has been opened again to allow it to pass through you. And now there's a process of calling back all the parts of yourself that have gone out with that experience into yourself, so that you can be consolidated and healthy mentally, psychologically, physically, spiritually, physiologically. There are nourishments that you have to do. There's a type of rest that you should take communally. Everything is reimagined as your new normal, your new self. Who you are after birth will never be who you were when pregnant, and will never be who you were before conceiving. And every open door must be closed before it can be rightly opened again. That was my lesson in my own experience. So, in following up until you close the door, that story, I ask you, what experiences or births or any part of your fertility journey, what have you yet to close the door on? Did you get the rest you needed during your postpartum period? Did you get the care or the swaddling? Have you told all the stories that need to be told or witnessed? For me, I needed to grieve. I hadn't finished grieving, and the uncried tears kept the door ajar. And the inability and the lack of access to being able to acknowledge my experience as valid and whole and complete and worthy of time and restoration, that was what kept my door ajar for 4 or 5 years after that experience. How does the experience that you've yet to close the door on, how does that color your life, your language, the way you live, if at all? And if you have adequately closed the door in those spaces, and you think about that, also celebrate what rituals, what practices, what did you do to close the door rightly? And how does that color your life, your language, and your living? What stories do you have now that you could share and could tell with someone? How could that inform your presence with others who you can sense, there's this door still ajar? And maybe just sharing your story about how you sealed yourself up could really bless and help and support someone else in finding their way as well. And finally, how would you like to be? How would you have liked to have been cocooned in your postpartum period? What did you enjoy about your postpartum period? What helped you close those doors? Cultures all around the world have something sacred, whether it's a closing of the bones in the Southern America, Central and Southern Americas, or the belly binding of West and Central Africa, or like just all kinds of 40-day rituals where the mama is literally wrapped up in care, with fabric, with foods, and just kept warm as she's coming back to herself. And so how would you like to be cocooned in that postpartum period? When I think of closing the door, I think of closing it gently, softly, warmly, safely, not locking it. We're just closing it so that you can stay warm on the inside and keep things that are outside that are not meant to keep coming in from coming into a sacred space. So how would you like that to go for you? How would you have liked it to go? And if it went exactly as you wanted it to, what made it that way? The title of this story is Don't Call Me. I wish I could witness more mamas saying, Don't call me. After my goddaughter was born, um, as we were coming home, I remember my sister friend saying to me, yeah, I let everyone know beforehand, don't call me, don't text me, don't ask for pictures, don't expect to hear anything from me for a while. And there's so many things. There's so many things amazing about this. The fact that she drew the boundary, the fact that she was safe enough to do so in her circle and that people respected it. And if they didn't, she was saying, hey, this is what I'm asking of you. But if you do, don't expect to hear from me. My focus won't be on entertaining you and giving you updates. Um, and in her postpartum period, which is one of the most beautiful that I have witnessed, she was able to find her way through breastfeeding. And it's so funny because she kept saying, what are the strategies? What do I need to know? And I'm like, you and your baby will find your way. Y'all will figure this thing out. You'll have time. You're blessed with time and space to just figure it out. The goal isn't for the journey to be easy, but to be doable, to be doable in the timing and in the pacing that feels right and easeful for you and your life and what is available to you. And because she blocked out all this excess communication, she had her energy reserves, which were already depleted just from having birthed and from nursing and from being up at all hours of the night and learning this new normal and being with her body, being with her baby, being with life and her partner, everything. She had those reserves that would have gone out, updating everyone in order to tap in, tune in to what she and her baby and her partner and their family needed at that time. She was able to download and intuit a brilliant idea that's over a year later. She's just now starting to sow the seeds and birth a business out of everything she experienced in her postpartum time. And so her actually drawing this line of demarcation and inviting people to leave her alone created a safe, soft, simplified, sacred space for her to be wholly present with everything as it came up. Every kind of emotion, every kind of experience, every kind of moment, she was fully there in it and with herself and with all of the labors that were immediately before her because she was not distracted by updating us on the outside or tuning into our curiosities. And so she was available to stream. As I said, there's this door that closes almost very slowly after birth. It feels like the energy of it doesn't like slam shut. It closes slowly afterwards. And so this door, in that door, she was able to receive not only information that helped her protect her health and well-being, but helped her protect her baby's health and well-being, helped them, her and her spouse, fortify what they wanted their family to look like going forward, make changes and pivots as necessary, um, helped her to reimagine what her career would look like moving forward. What is I'm enjoying this. How do I get more of this? What ways can I create more space for myself? And that all began with three simple words: don't call me. The best three words she could have possibly uttered to her tribe and to her community. And so, my ask on the heels of don't call me, or what are your requests? What requests do you have for your postpartum period? These are requests that need to be communicated to your tribe, to your partner, to whomever is going to be with you. And in fact, they're agreements that are wise to make ahead of time. You know, it's wise to know who can keep their word in honoring what you most need during that time. So what requests do you have? And how will you begin now, or how did you, or how will you begin making way, clearing space for that reality to take root? Because wishing it isn't enough. You've got to let people know, you've got to remind them. When you have the energy to communicate, remind them, we're not going to be doing this again, okay? And let them know if there is something they can do. Now, if you want to do something helpful, you can come and pick up these clothes and then drop them back off at the front door. Or if you want to be helpful, make me your favorite, like, cabbage stew, or your, congee bowl, or whatever it is. I love when you make your mac and cheese. So make me some of that, and so I can freeze it. But we have to clear space before we throw the seeds down, and get the land ready to receive it, to give it its best chances. It's no guarantee, but to give the best chance of the seeds taking root. And that seed, that wish, that vision you have for yourself, that's a seed. How are you going to prepare for that? And what softens your postpartum? What would soften it? What did soften it? What made it simpler? What would have made it feel safer? What makes it feel safe now? What makes it sacred? And by sacred, I simply mean set apart from ordinary life. It's a part of life, but it's a unique part of life. How do you mark that? How do you want to mark that? Do you want to mark that? Do you want to just kind of like not make it such a big deal? You get to choose. This is your experience. You totally get to choose every step of the way. Whatever you choose, you prepare the ground for that. And how are you willing to do that? And so, on the heels of, don't call me, I feel that this is the perfect follow up story. This is called Please Just Hold Him. I supported a mama who is extremely intuitive. This is her third child, third birth. Um, and she, had a very interesting experience her third time. She experienced nausea throughout the entire pregnancy. And so she was tired. By the time when it came time to birth, she was exhausted mentally and physiologically, like just that sensation and nothing working. And she's very well aware of, all the alternative modalities. And she went to her obstetrician, like she did all the things and nothing was working. And so she had her baby, and she was expecting it to be similar to the other times. But I always say, you'd never just birth a child. You birth a new person. You birth a mother. A mother of two is not a mother of three. A mother of one is not a mother of two. You birth yourself anew. You birth a new reality. You birth a new normal. It takes time for all that newness to like congeal and to find its pattern. And a lot of times it's very easy to focus on the tangle rather than the weave. Just the art of weaving, you're bound to get some tangles in there. And that doesn't mean things are going wrong. This is just life, anything in life. Very few things just go off without a hitch or a challenge. And so, I checked in with her at our 6 week time, a couple days after the birth. And our 6 week time is just like, sounding thin energetically for who I know her to be. She's very much a go-getter, an entrepreneur, juggling multiple hats, and she's usually really good at asking for help. And she's the person people usually come to for help. So I think there was a part of her that was wrestling with what is the scope of the help I need, and trying to integrate the fact that like this is different, and she was trying to wrap her mind around why this is different. And I'm so glad when we went to do her belly binding ceremony, while we were doing that, she said, "Do you think you have some time to fit me in on your schedule for postpartum care?" And I said, "Of you, of baby, of both, of family?" Like, because the care can be expansive to the whole family unit. And she said, "I just need you to please just hold him." And I was like, "I can do that." I can totally do that. And I found such courage in her softening, in her grace with herself. When some people are gushing over this moment, it's like I have two other whole humans and a partner and a business that's also a baby of sorts. And if you could just give me a couple of hours where he won't be put down, but where he will be held by someone who has fresh energy and care, and whose voice he's also heard throughout this gestational period, and whose energy he's also come to know through your presence with me, that would be really helpful. And I did that. I did that for months. And we would just have these times, and we discovered songs that he liked. He really liked classical Japanese music. And we discovered movements that he enjoyed. And, in there's an African proverb that it takes a village to raise a child, right? And so in that, there is no shame. It's expected. It's not expected for two people to do it. It's definitely not expected for one to do it alone. It is expected that the whole community will be a part of this journey, um, starting immediately. And we lose that in the West, where everything's so separate and everybody and generations are often spread out from each other. And good long term friends are across the country, and people can't take off of work and all the things, right? But when you are blessed to have someone who can just hold him or her or the child, um, it is totally fine to ask for what you need and to get it. And so much wealth comes from it. Sometimes she was working, sometimes she was sleeping. I didn't ask how she spent her time. There were days I would go and I didn't even see her, unless she needed to nurse him. And she tried to time it, and she would pump an extra bottle just so that she could really have moments to consolidate and gather herself after this journey, and to reimagine, what does my new normal look like? And she just needed a few hours each day to do that, knowing that her child was in her home, safe, loved, and in the arms of someone familiar enough, and she was close enough to come if needed, but where she wasn't so necessary in that exact moment. And I hope, if in nothing else, that this story gives whoever needs it permission to ask for what is needed when it's needed. Because when we postpone those needs, they tend to flare up on another end or in another category of life. They don't go away, they just pop up somewhere else. Please just hold him. Even your neighbor can do that. A friend can do that. So it's good. It's a good reminder. And so now I invite you and I ask you, what do you feel apprehensive about asking for in the postpartum period? This is the time after birth. This is your time of rest, recovery, reimagination. But we still can become shy or get in our heads about what we're asking for. Um, what do you feel apprehensive about asking for? And if you could simplify your request to 4 to 5 words, what would it say? Hers said, "Please just hold him." We were standing there with muslin wrapped around her hips and waist, and asking her, how does it feel? And, her taking movements and seeing how it felt on her body. And then she just, "Are you available? Please just hold him." It was really simple. No explanation, and none needed. Something I've learned in life is that people who need explanations very seldom appreciate them. So don't waste your extra breath and your precious energy giving explanations. If the question isn't just answered, then that's just what it is. And now, while you have some kind of presence, even if just energetically, take this time to send that curated ask, that curated response. Send that request to at least one person just to practice asking for what you need. Asking opens doors. It takes a lot of courage to ask. It is very vulnerable. It can feel very scary because you don't know what you're going to receive. And a lot of us see a no as rejection or as a door closing. But when you ask, you're not just asking the person, you're asking the all that is. You are asking the universe. You are asking everything. You're asking life, support me. And what I've found is that if you ask, especially aloud, if you ask for what you need, even if you write this in your journal, even if you text this to yourself, there will come an answer. And it may be from the place you least expected. It may not be from where you asked it, but the answer will come. So take this time to commemorate your curated ask and send it somewhere. Send it somewhere where you believe there will be gentle reception. You can even say, I'm just practicing asking. Thanks for practicing with me. It could be that simple. The ritual of asking is healing in life after birth. It is healing in life after parting. We need to ask. The asking is sometimes the answer in and of itself. Another moment will come. This is the perfect story to seal up our time together. I was sitting with a new mama, and she was having a tough moment, and she kept saying nothing is going right. And I asked her, I said, what is right? What would right look like? Um, because one day she had dreams of having a big family, and this was her first child. I said, one day you'll know better how to navigate this space because it wasn't easy. So is right easy? Or like, how do we know what right is? I am of the belief that our children, through pregnancy and beyond, they gift us through their challenges, especially, and through the sweet moments. They gift us what we most need to grow as individuals and what we most need to parent, to mother them. So everything becomes an initiation in motherhood. And a lot of times we view mothering and parenting like capitalism, like it should be working. It doesn't work. It's not working. It's not producing the intended outcome. It's not easy, efficient, energy saving. It is not a worthwhile endeavor. And this is life. This is a journey. Journeys are for the brave, are for the courageous, are for those who can adapt. That's what life does. It shapes us into who we need to be to travel the path up ahead. And so when I asked her, what is right? She was just like, I feel tired all the time, and I'm hungry, and I don't know what to do. And she didn't have like a very vast network of support, not because they weren't there, but because she just hadn't asked and invited it. And so we talked about a lot of things. You know, she wasn't in the mood to plan and to map out and to mitigate. She just needed to get things out. And the thing that was the most comforting to her was when I said, you know, just be here. Just be in this moment as fully as possible. The moment of frustration, the moment of fatigue, the moments of beauty, the moments of all the feelings. Be here because another moment will come. Another moment will come. And that means relishing the joyful ones because they won't stay. And being excited and celebrating everything that you discover about what makes mothering more enjoyable and empowering and expansive for you. And that also means feeling all the uncomfortable emotions, feeling them to the bone without fear, without judgment, maybe with a slight curiosity, like what's underneath this, you know? And knowing I can go into this deeply, but let me tell you, the phone will ring, the baby will cry, something will happen, and another moment will come. Someone will come to visit, a text will arrive, you'll see something, another moment will come, and another moment, and another moment. And so every moment becomes precious, but not so incredibly pressing that we have to make an assessment or a judgment over the next 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months, 3 years of our lives. We don't have to cast this shadow of judgment over the whole of ourselves because of this moment, because soon this moment will be another moment. And then that judgment and that assessment could be something totally different. And to save ourselves the roller coaster ride, we can just breathe into it and say, okay, another moment will come. And some moments are just meant to be ridden out. They don't necessarily need to be fixed. You just got to ride them. Just ride them, laugh through them, whatever it looks like. Just move through the moment. Another moment will come. In closing our session together, I leave you with a few questions. Initially we were asking, what comes to mind when you think of postpartum? What stories do you have associated with postpartum? What is it to you? What would you like it to be to you? Now I ask you, what other moments are you dreaming into being? What feels possible for you in your postpartum? And what moments do you envision forthcoming? And I ask this because hope is one thing, but we tend to be able to magnetize what we can see. And so we have to be careful about what we see, you know, whether it's through music or social media or other people's vlogs and experiences. Pause that for a second and just create enough soft space where you can envision or allow a vision to waft up. And it may just be a moment. It may not be the whole thing. It's just like, oh, it would be so nice to have a moment that feels like this. Give yourself permission to dream something into being, to see it in your heart before you hold it in your hands. That's my invitation for you and for your postpartum experience. And now we're going to close out with a closing meditation. We round out our time together with silence, a moment for you to reflect on the previous questions. What are you dreaming into being? What feels possible in your postpartum period, in your postpartum journey? My teacher told me something very valuable. She said, oh, postpartum is the perfect time to reclaim whatever a mother or birther wanted during pregnancy and birth that they didn't get. This is the perfect time to reclaim that. This is the perfect time to weave that into their story, to integrate and have the kinds of intimate moments that they may have dreamed of and life may have gone another way, or to relive the beauty of their experience or somewhere in between. Relive the beautiful parts, to excavate the beautiful parts, and also to round out the experience with different choices in the now moment. And so I invite you to close your eyes and just for about 2 minutes for us to just sit in silence together. Get comfortable, simply be with all that is here. Follow your breath, and let that be enough. Thank you so much. I want to thank you for spending your time, your energy, and your attention with me, your irreplaceable time, which means the world to me that you lent your precious currency of life to these moments. And as always, I like to send you off with a blessing to cover you, to follow you, to lead you, to guide you, to accompany you on your journeys as you go out into the world and live. And what I offer comes from Brene Brown. Owning your story is the bravest thing you'll ever do. Please remember that. However, these stories have shaped or moved you, whatever has been awakened for you, your story could be doing the same to someone else, and your story, it matters. Tell your story to your child, to the wind, to your journal, to your pet, to your women's group, whatever. Tell your story somewhere. See how it feels. Tell a little part. Drip your story somewhere. Courage transforms us in unimaginable ways, and it opens up spaces of possibility. It opens up opportunities that seemed like they weren't there before. It also helps us to see ourselves differently and to be in ourselves differently. We make room for ourselves within ourselves and within our lives by taking radical responsibility for what we've experienced and how we color and how we allow it to color and shape us. Own your story. I love connecting in real time, and the best way to get in touch with me is through email. That's hi@wombandword.com. I respond to all emails personally and as promptly as possible. And if you want to visit my web home, you can do that at www.wombandword.com. Either way, I look forward to maybe being able to bear witness to some of your stories and share even more of mine with you. Thank you so much.